Hello, it's Marion from Wool Thread Paint again. Today I'm here with the follow-on to the Continuous Join As You Go video tutorial, which you will find on my YouTube channel. I did promise you that once I had done the one for the centre block of 9 squares, I would be back to show you how to make a round of granny squares and join them with the Continuous Join As You Go around the outside of that centre block. And you'll find that in a lot of my patterns, the continuous join as you go single rounds of granny squares will appear sometimes 2 or 3 times throughout the pattern. You'll be pleased to know that this is actually easier to follow than the centre block of 9, particularly because of the direction of travel. It is more straightforward, and once you know the route that you'll be taking, it's very easy just to work around the outside, and that's what I'm going to show you today. The starting point, working around, and the finish. So coming up first is the diagram, which you can actually stop the video to study carefully, and you can see from the green dot that you'll be starting in the bottom right corner of the first square to join. Okay, so let's start. Going back to the block of 9 granny squares, we're going to start edging that. You will have made up all these lovely granny squares, and they're very neat, of course, because they've all had their ends sewn in, haven't they? And they've been stored on my knitting needle in what I call the yarn kebab, so that they're in the right order and the right way up for joining. So that means that you don't need to think about it now. It's all there for you. I've in fact taken the first one off already, and I've done the first side of my square. If I move this up a little bit, you'll be able to see it, I hope. And it's back to working with half trebles. So I attached my yarn in the bottom right corner, chained 2 and 2 half trebles, and then 3 half trebles in each space up the side, and then so far I've done 3 half trebles in the corner space. And what we're going to do is we're going to work around each of the squares on 3 sides only, so we're not going to work along the bottom. And when we're coming along the top edge of the square, we're going to be attaching it with a slip stitch into each space along the edge of the blanket. Bend down and then attach the second square and do the same thing. So that is the kind of direction that we're going to go all the way around the 4 sides. I do think it's actually a bit easier to follow the direction you're supposed to be going in when you're doing this part than when you were doing the full square, so you should enjoy this. Right. So I've got my 4mm hook, and my parchment yarn is already in use. And now I've done my 3 half trebles in the corner. Maybe I'll just move this along a little bit. And then I just need to find the corner. We'll call this square, this section here, the blanket. This is now the blanket. So I just need to put my hook into the corner space of the blanket and pull up a slip stitch. And that's the first anchoring joining stitch that we've made. Then yarn over and finish off the 3 half trebles in that corner space. 2, 3. And then find the next space along on the blanket, make another slip stitch, and then 3 half trebles. Slip stitch. Like I said before, the reason I do the half treble stitch as opposed to the full treble stitch is because I like the slightly smaller and crisper look to this stitch for joining. It makes the squares stand out more, I think, than having a big joining stitch. And there is what it looks like. We've got the slip stitch into the blanket in between each of the groups of half trebles. Very easy. And I'm liking, again, working flat on the table for the join. It doesn't have to be. You can easily do it on your lap, but I just think it helps to keep it clear in your mind where you're going. Slip stitch, and then we're at the corner of this square and the corner of this square and the corner of our new square. So we're going to do half of this corner first. So yarn over and 3 half trebles, 1, 2, 3, and then instead of slip stitching into this space, we're actually going to go diagonally into this corner space of this square. So we're going across the way, and we're going to leave, we're not going to put anything into this square now. We'll do it when we come to do it when we join the second square. So slip stitch diagonally over into the second square, and then we can swing things round a little to make it easier and work down the side. So that is 3 half trebles, and just straight down with 3 half trebles in each space. And when we get to the bottom, we're just going to put the half of that corner in for the time being, so it's 3 half trebles. There we go. And like I said, don't work this last edge at this point, because then you'd find yourself with nowhere to go. We're wanting to make this a continuous join. So we'll leave this side unworked. I'll put it back round and you can see the first square attached. Now I've got square number 2 in position, and it's time to start attaching it. And we did our 3 half trebles in the first corner of the corner of the first square, and now I'm just going straight over and putting in 3 half trebles into the corner of the second square. And if I swing that round, you can see that looking nice and neat. And then we're going to work up, of course, up this side with a slip stitch. You should have the gist of this now. Slip stitch into the previous square and 3 half trebles into the second square and slip stitch. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to the top with this and take you around the corner, and then I'll leave you to work some squares. Slip stitch and 3 half trebles. Slip stitch, and now we're at the corner. So I'm going to put my 3 half trebles as usual into this corner space. 1, 2, 3. And remember, we attached this corner diagonally from this across like that, so we're going back the way now, and we're just going right over that join and into the corner of the square with the stitch marker and then back over. We've made a slip stitch and then back over to finish off the corner with 3 half trebles. And there you can see that all 4 sides, all 4 corners are now attached to each other. So I'll just work along here and I'll slip stitch diagonally into this space and down. And what I'll do is I'll come back when we're at the point up to just about to join the corner, because that's the only square that doesn't get joined at this point on 3 sides. It just gets joined on 2, and that can sometimes confuse people. So I'll see you back when we get to that point. I'm back now, and unfortunately my light is fading fast, but we'll see if we can get around this. So I've got the first 3 squares attached, and as I said, I would be back at this point when I had done the 3 sides of my 3rd square. So the 4th one is actually going to be right out on that corner, and it works in just the same way as before. We do our 3 half trebles. 1, 2, 3. And then work up the side. And I'm going to quickly do that if I can. So slip stitch into the space on the previous square, 3 half trebles, and slip stitch, three half trebles, and slip stitch. Oops. And 3 half trebles, 1, 2, 3. We're nearly at the corner. 3 slip stitch, and here we are at the corner again. So it's 3 half trebles into the corner. 1, 2, 3, and then diagonally into the previous square, because we don't have anywhere else to go at this point. There isn't another square, and 3 half trebles all the way down. I'm just trying to race on with this. As I say, I'm racing against the fading light, but hopefully manage. And we're down at the corner of the corner square, 2, 3, and this is what I want to explain. And I have had some people get confused about this. Because we've done the 3 sides of the squares, they assume that we're going to come up, along, and down this. But when we get, if you were to do that, you would find yourself with nowhere to go, because we really want to start joining this next square here. So these outer squares are the ones where 2 sides are left undone. And we take the next square and place it. I've been sewing everything round again. And we just continue like we did at the beginning of this round, and we're ready to start this side. Up, round, down, up, round, down, up, round, down, and then 2 sides of the next corner. These sides will be sorted when we come right the way round at the very end. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work all the way round, and as you could imagine, as I come down this side, I'll come up this side, and then I'll come along and I'll find myself back where I started at this point here. And that's where I'll come back when I've got all my squares attached and I'm ready to do the outside edge. So I'll pop back in a few minutes. And I'm all the way round. I've reached the end of my squares to join. My knitting needle is empty. And I just came back at this point. I've attached the last square on one side, and I thought I would just let you see what I'm going to do with the corners, because we've got 3 corners here now. And I think what I'm going to do with this one, it's all very much a matter of choice when it comes to slip stitching into the corners, I think. So I'm going to slip stitch into the previous square, and then I'm going to come diagonally up and slip stitch into the first square. And that just means that I'm slip stitching into squares whose corners are the same colour as the parchment that I'm working with. And then finishing off with 3 half trebles. So I've just got to come down this side, and then I'll have reached the point where I started. 1, 2, 3. And I want to just talk very briefly about this bottom edge, because there's another flashpoint in patterns that I find that people can have a problem. So I just want to mention that, and then I'll take you around the beginning at least of the last border. 1, 2, 3. I keep looking up because I just want to check that I've got you in camera. 1, 2, 3. Slip stitch. Right, now let me just, almost out of my parchment yarn, but it'll be enough to take you around the corner, and then I'll start some more. Right, so we've got to this point here, and I'm just going to put in my 3 half trebles on my last square. There. Now, a common mistake that I have discovered more often, well, more often than you would think, is that people come to me when they're making a blanket and say that the next section they're working on isn't fitting. Maybe they're, we're doing another round of squares further on, and they're not fitting into the pattern. Now, almost the first thing I will say to them is check the bottom edge of your round of squares where you've used the continuous join as you go, because it can happen that you get to this point and you think, well, that's me, I'm finished, and you cut your yarn and finish it off, and then you start the next part of the blanket, forgetting to do the outside edge. And I can fully understand why. Your squares look as if they're quite securely attached, so it's easy to forget that there is an edge to do. But if you do forget that edge, you will throw the count out for the rest of the blanket and things won't fit. So bear that in mind when you're doing an edge like this, and you will be doing a border. I can't remember now if it's 1 or 2 more. It's 2 more borders of squares on this blanket using the continuous join as you go. So just bear that in mind. Every time you do that, you've got an outside edge to make. And having said that, I'm going to start. So I've swung my blanket round, and you can see that this is where I stopped there, just briefly to show you, and that was the first 3 half trebles in this corner. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to chain 2 as if it was an outside corner and put 3 more in. 1, 2, 3. And that means that this corner has been completed. And I'm going to start and work around the outside edge. 2, 3. And I've got all 4 sides of the blanket to work the half treble clusters in. So that's just a job that has to be done. 1, 2, 3. When you get to the outside corner, of course, it's 3 half trebles, chain 2 and 3 half trebles. And 3 half trebles. And I'm going to swing this round. I'm going to just take you to this part. Let's see if I can get this in. It's getting a little bit bigger now. I'm going to take you down here and I'm going to show you what happens when we get to this part, because there's just a little different thing to do. It's 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and that yarn is going to annoy me. But in this sample piece, I'm actually just trying to use up all the odds and ends of the colours that were left over from the main blanket. Right, so now I have completed almost all 4 sides of my square here. This is the last square. We're working backwards. But we've come to the point where we've got a corner of this square which has only got 3 half trebles in it, and a corner of this square that's only got 3 half trebles. So both these corners need to be finished off, of course, with 3 half trebles. So we'll start the first one. So that's 1, 2, 3. And if I was to jump over here to put the next 3 in, you're going to be left with quite a big kind of bulge, because you'll be pulling all that yarn together. What we want to do is move our working yarn from this point to this point in a neat and tidy fashion. So to do that, chain 1. Then pull apart the join so that you can see the gap, put your hook in and slip stitch. That doesn't show up or do anything, it's just making sure that your yarn is moving. Chain 1 again, and then 3 half trebles in the second corner space. 2, 3. And there you can see that the join has worked in very neatly with the 3 half trebles. So you've got 3 more 3 half trebles and then another join, 3 half trebles, chain 1, slip stitch, chain 1, 3 half trebles. So you can work all the way around all 4 sides, and I'm going to do that. I will have to start a new ball of my yarn, which is rather annoying, but never mind. And I'll come back when I've got to this point to show you how we finish off. So I've come all the way around now, all 4 sides of the outside edge of the blanket, and I'm back to the point where we started. This was the very last square that we attached and worked down here, and then of course, if you remember, I completed that corner and then started the journey all the way around and all around the 4 sides, and I'm now back to this point, remembering of course that little bit to do between the corners there, the corner spaces. So we just need to finish off. This was the very first square that we did way back, so I'm just needing to finish off that corner with 3 half trebles. Just let me make sure I'm in the center. That's it. 1, 2, 3. Chain 2 because it's a corner, and slip stitch into the top of the very first chain 2 that we did. Pick up 2 loops, please, and pull through. Now, just before we finish off the yarn, we've got to attach it to this corner as well. So all you need to do is put your hook into that corner and pull up a slip stitch, and then we can cut the yarn and pull it through. And there we have it. So that is the outside edge. And with that, your new round of granny squares, which have been joined with the continuous join as you go, are finished. And everything is looking very neat and tidy and ready to move on to the next part of whichever blanket it is you're working on. This one, by the way, is the Winter Walk blanket, which is the companion blanket to the Beach Walk blanket, and you'll find it in my Etsy and Ravelry shops. Just to say, the half treble stitch, one of the main reasons I do the half treble stitch, apart from the nice small size, is the lovely crisp corners that you achieve with that stitch. So anyway, moving on to the next part of your blanket, whichever one it is, and that is continuous join as you go. I hope you've enjoyed it. Bye.